Levity! Hang on, let me pause this. Mr. Levity, hello! How are you, sir? There we go. How are you? Everything okay? Oh, I've been missing you on the streams. We actually have a funny and wonderful things. Oh, good. I'm very happy. Very, very happy. We actually have some fun stuff that we're gonna watch today. The last stream on Friday, UK time sucks. Oh no, why? What do you mean? Thank you for the promotion, but no thanks. Because I missed some of your streams. It's 7 p.m. here. Oh. Well, is it a little better today on the weekend? I was gonna say that on the last stream we were watching some theory videos. And Mr. Levity, you gotta hear me out on this theory that I came up. I instinctively just tried to ban that dude. I was about to, but I don't remember how. Oh, figure it out. There we go. If you don't ban them, they'll send more. There you go. I was trying, but I forgot where it was. Good. Anyways, Mr. Levity, you need to listen to this theory that I had, right? So, you know Tears of the Kingdom, the new one. It's confirmed that it's not a tear. Nintendo confirmed that it's not Tear of the Kingdom, but Tear of the Kingdom, right? New game. And while I was watching some theory videos, we're going to be watching more today because I don't feel amazing physically. So that's why I'm taking it easy. But look, these are called tears from Skyward Sword. So I'm thinking it is very possible that by Tears of the Kingdom they mean something like this. Because also on the new trailer you can see Link holding this like vials on his pocket. And I was like, So if it has anything to do with this kind of tears, it's probably gonna be creepy as heck. Which is what they said the game was gonna be at the end of the day. Just saying. So we're gonna have to see. Yeah, exactly. Definitely related to Skyward Sword. Right. But the Ganon in the trailer is definitely the one from Twilight Princess, as the sword is in the same place. It's true. It's true. I hadn't thought about where the Ganon was from. I hadn't even thought about that. You're right. Oh, it's definitely not the Ganon from Skyward Sword, because that's not Ganon. That's the mice, right? And that does not look like the mice. But I hadn't thought about that. Hi, Alberto! ¿Cómo estás? How's everything? I'm happy to see you. Welcome to another very fun stream today. The mice is dead. Right, exactly. So that's why I was like, nah, it cannot be the mice. But it definitely has something to do with the Skyward Sword. And if they do something like, I don't know, the kingdom is like fallen into a curse and you need to go through each map section and collect tears and free the villagers because they're possessed or some shit. I don't know. I'm just trying to figure out exactly how it can be creepier than Majora's Mask, which is what we have been promised. So, meh. Anyways, for now, I saw this video on Friday, but I ran out of time. So I didn't have a chance to show it. But it's called Twilight Princess Dungeons Explained. It's a Zelda Theories. I love Twilight Princess. I want to see what this guy has to say about the temples because the temples are very particular on that on that game. And I saw this video, but I had ran out of time, so I didn't see it. And I want to see it today with you guys if you guys are in agreement with wanting to see this video. Otherwise, I'll see it on my own. But if you guys are also interested, I'll play this. I obviously want to do something you're interested on too, so please tell me. I don't want the map to be the same as Breath of the Wild. I don't either. They have to do some changes. They do. That's why the time travel was a potential option. Either to the future or to the back, you know, to the woo, and they can do different towns, etc. But I don't know exactly how they're going to go about that. Because we explore that map so much that they cannot make it the same. It's going to be boring, you know. And I'm sure they know that. Hola, colega. Hey, Krat Willy. How are you? Everything okay? Snow Peak Ruins, best dungeon ever. Right? Yeah, so we're gonna watch this one. Let's watch it. I am very, very curious. I'm gonna start it. Keep your theories coming and talk. I do pause the video a few times through when I want to make a comment or when I see somebody said something. So be free to talk to me or to make your theories or talk about anything. It's a lot more fun when we do that, in my opinion, at least for me. So let's watch this. Just for credits' sake, this is from Nintendo Black Crisis, who is amazing. If you don't follow him and you like Zelda Theories, do. He's awesome. Hydrating. Anyways, let's start.
This video is sponsored by Squarespace.
We're gonna skip the sponsor for obvious reasons.
Replayed for like the second time in my whole life. And it was one of the first Zelda games I beat back in the day, alongside others such as Ocarina of Time 3D and A Link Between Worlds. It was a game that I always intended on going back to, but I just kept putting it off since it's one of the longer Zelda titles.
It is long.
This time I experienced the game in its full 1080p glory, and I'm glad I did. All I can say is expect more Twilight Princess content on the channel. But enough of that, let's get to the topic at hand. Dungeons. There are tons of them in the series, and for this video in particular, we're going to be looking at half of them in Twilight Princess. And joining me today is the one, the only, Bandit Games.
He's also
so
awesome.
Once you're done with this video, make sure to head over to his channel where we cover the
awesome.
dungeons not mentioned in this one.
By the way, if you I'm gonna even apple.
As with many Zelda games, dungeons typically fall into one of two categories. Those that get plenty of love by the devs and are remembered by the players, and the ones that are clearly not the favorite child of the bunch. Factors such as a dungeon's gameplay, aesthetic, and yes, even lore play a huge part in whether or not that experience sticks with the players. While this does result in masterpieces such as the Ancient Cistern or the Forest Temple, others such as Twilight Princess's Goron Mines are sadly neglected, especially in the lore department. I mean, look.
I'm gonna talk to you about the Goron Mines, okay? Funny enough, I have heard from so many people how much they hate the Goron Mines. I'm not gonna lie, to me, it's the most awesome fire style temple that they have fucking done. I love it. I love the concept. I love the mine. I love the design. I love the concept of the boots. I love it. I love the concept of the elders of the Goron actually being here and you going to talk to them. Like, it feels more real. I actually enjoy them a lot and I don't understand the hate. Anyways.
Look at this list. Of all the dungeons shown, this is clearly the least dense when it comes to lore. But that doesn't mean we have nothing to work off of. According to Gorkoron, the acting patriarch of the Goron tribe, the light spirits entrusted them with one of the fused shadow pieces, which was then stored away deep.
The Palace of Time was so cool when you actually went back. The Palace of Time is awesome. Twilight Princess, listen, they need to bring back the dungeon style of Twilight Princess. All the Twilight Princess temples, listen, even the Water Temple, which is a bitch, but all the Twilight Princess temples are masterpieces. They are. They all are. The Snow Peak, the Arbiter's Grounds, the Goron Mines, the Sky One, the Temple of the Time Temple, they're awesome. The Skyloft Dungeon can bugger off though. Skyloft Dungeon. Which one was that? Oh yeah, no, fuck that one. Oh no, fuck that one. It's fucking complicated. Goron Mine was not great? No, I don't think it was great either. But I did enjoy it. And I think it deserves more love than it's given. In my opinion.
Deep within the mines. However, the four elders and Patriarch Darbus were forced to investigate the mines given Death Mountain's recent violent behavior, which is likely due to the fused shadow. After touching the ancient relic, Darbus was transformed into a twilight monster and sealed within the mines, much to the dismay of the Goron elders. Worried for their safety, the tribe cut ties with Kakariko village, requiring Link to acquire the iron boots and beat the acting Patriarch in a sumo wrestling competition, with his victory granting him access to Death Mountain as well as their sacred mines. mines. The dungeon itself is made up of numerous smaller rooms that are connected to two much larger exterior chambers. Most of them are either filled with lava or water, along with mining equipment. In fact, much of this mining process appears to be automated through the use of machines, most notably the massive cranes in the two central locations. There's also the rotating platforms, including a giant one situated right outside of the mini-boss chamber, a complex pipe system, and BMOS, which have taken on a much more robotic appearance in this game. Gorkoron mentions that the mines are filled with traps meant to keep outsiders away from the dungeon, so it's likely that not all of these contraptions were built for the purpose of mining. Some of it exists simply to ward off intruders. You couldn't even get as far as past the first room since it requires you to deactivate the pipe spewing fire, which can only be done by pressing a switch that's far too heavy to weigh down unless the one doing it is a Goron. It's rather odd to see such technologically advanced machinery in these mines, as the Gorons tend to do any mining or excavation work manually, given their brute strength. And the times we do see them clearing out chunks of rock, it's using their bare hands rather than any sort of equipment. Not to mention that in Ocarina of Time, the two dungeons of the Gorons, Dodongo's Cavern and the Fire Temple, are both severely lacking in terms of technology. At the most, there are some moving platforms and intricate stonework within the latter, but that's nothing compared to the colossal cranes of Twilight Princess's mines. One possible explanation is that the Gorons got help from the humans, which eventually led to the construction of all the technology seen in the present. We already know that prior to the fused shadow corrupting Darbus, the Gorons were on good terms with Kakariko Village. In fact, we find out early on that the Gorons are the suppliers for Barnes' bomb shop, and that he's unable to restock his supplies given the current situation. Once Link enters the mines and quells the Twilight Igniter Virus, his business reopens and the player is able to purchase bombs once again. So it's likely that one of the things mined here are materials for explosives. There are also numerous portraits of handprints on the walls of the mines, specifically in the chambers where Link finds the three elders, as well as the entrance to the dungeon itself, and their size suggests
What is the reason?
them to be human handprints. However, these prints appear to be pressed into the metal itself, and the only species capable of doing so without injury are the Goron, so maybe these are of younger ones? But they definitely resemble human hands more, at least in our opinion. Another indicator of the good relations between Gorons and humans is that, according to Mayor Bo, he once sumo wrestled and beat Gorkoron, who at that time was the tribe's patriarch. Gorkoron says as much when you speak to him. Mayor Bo is also the one who gives Link the iron boots, an item that's required to navigate the treacherous mines. In each of the Elders' chambers in the Goron mines, it's worth noting that, just like the entrance, these places also have sumo wrestling rings, as well as mining tools including shovels and pickaxes. There are also plenty of chairs present in these chambers, likely meant for spectators of sumo wrestling matches. However, there's also these stools which feel far too small and frail for Gorons to sit on, so perhaps these were meant for humans. At most, we know that Gorkoron is familiar with the Sheikah Eye emblem, as he's the one that points it out, a tribe which was closely connected to both the royal family and the Uka, a highly advanced civilization that was responsible for the creation of the Temple of...
I just noticed, this is probably terrible, but I just noticed that the fucking Gorons have nipples of rock. I don't... Alright, real question. I want y'all to answer. Real question. When you touch a Goron, like their belly, for example, do you think they're like steel? Or do you think they're like softy? Real question. I'm actually legitimately curious as to what you think. I want to think that they're softy. But I don't know. I don't know.
royal family and the Uka, a highly advanced civilization that was responsible for the creation of the Temple of Time dungeon, and technology found within, including the Dominion Rod. In fact, the Temple of Time is the second dungeon to include Beamos, but what's interesting is that their appearance differs from the ones in the Goron mines. They have a much more slender, almost futuristic appearance compared to the blocky and rustic-like ones in the mines. The ones in Death Mountain also have the Goron emblem imprinted at the bottom. All of this is to say that perhaps this stuff was constructed by Gorons using information and knowledge passed down through other tribes, such as the Sheikah and the Sky Beings. But this still leaves us with several questions. What about this dungeon made it sacred? Was it because it's somehow related to Ocarina of Time's Fire Temple? Were these mines built solely for bomb materials and nothing more? And when is NBC gonna grace us with his "oh my gosh, is that a Zone Ice World soundbite"? Not to worry, dear viewers, that will all be coming very soon. Now, because Gorkoron refers to these mines as sacred, it makes you wonder why that would be the case. I mean, it's quite literally a mine built for, well, mining stuff. But if this place were to be the same place as the Fire Temple, it would then make sense. Because not only is that place sacred due to its connection to the Seven Sages, there's also the legend of the ancient Goron warrior who slew Volvagia with the Megaton Hammer. A place with such history could no doubt be viewed as sacred. However, remember that the Fire Temple is situated in the heart of Death Mountain. Meanwhile, in Twilight Princess, it's heavily implied that this towering mountain in the distance is Death Mountain. I mean, do you see any other structures such as this that are close by? And right now, this shot is being captured from the entrance of the Goron mines. So while the general area we're in is the Death Mountain region, it's not Death Mountain proper. It's kind of like Dodongo's Cavern, as that place was also not technically inside Death Mountain. Now, even if we were to assume that the Goron mines is the same location as Dodongo's Cavern, why would that be considered sacred? Well, there's a simple explanation for that, although it still falls into theory territory. Recall that these mines were used not only to hold the hero's bow, an item belonging to an ancient hero, but also one of the pieces of the fused shadow, an item so dangerous it's capable of turning the strongest of characters into horrific monsters. And since this task was personally given to them by the light spirits, it's probably safe to say that the Gorons wouldn't want just anyone poking around in their mines. In regards to what this mine was used for, aside from bomb materials, it's worth noting that the cranes used are magnetic, suggesting that the Gorons were excavating some sort of metal. Since many of their platforms are made from metal, they could have been used for construction purposes. Or maybe some of the metal was used as the casing for explosives.
Yeah.
We know that Ocarina of Time's
The
Dodongo Cavern was
Temple
used
song.
to mine edible rocks, which might also be true for the Goron mines. There's also the pipe system found all throughout the dungeon. While we don't know much about what it's used for, one possible answer is that they're all connected to the one spewing fire at the entrance. Some of these could also be pumping lava through the dungeon, or perhaps hot water for the hot springs. In fact, apparently the Gorons make a fortune selling the...
Can y'all hear me too? Because I was hoping you didn't, but I just saw the microphone go like when I chew. And I don't know if you guys are getting it. No, not chewy sounds. Oh, good. Okay, because it's not supposed to be ASMR. I'm trying to remember how I found your stream, but I cannot. I think I was playing Twilight Princess, Mr. Levity, but I am not certain 100%. I think so. I think it was one of the times that I was actually playing Twilight Princess. You've turned my volume up and you can hear it. Damn it! You want ASMR? Let's listen. It's too weird for me. No, I know, me either. Don't worry. Was it Ocarina of Time? I don't know. Ocarina of Time was more recent than Twilight Princess. If it was Ocarina of Time, then you did find me recent-ish. I thought it was a little bit longer. But it could be. It could be.
stuff to the folks at Castletown, so perhaps the Goron mines have something to do with that. One detail that's very interesting is the fact that these two exterior chambers are very different. The wood scaffolding and fewer cranes in the second might suggest that this area is currently under construction, with the other side showing what the end product will be. The fact that certain locations are filled with either lava or water might mean that the Gorons are using the pipes to drain and fill certain rooms. Honestly, there are so many ways to interpret these two chambers. Aside from that, the only other interesting tidbit is this odd script found within the mine.
3 months, huh? It might have been. It was either Twilight Princess or Ocarina of Time because I played them sort of around the same time.
Which might be sort of a Goron language. There are also these symbols on the wall, but that's pretty much it when it comes to the Goron mines.
Oh my gosh, is that a Zonai swirl?
See, I told you guys it was gonna happen. Although I may have cheated because, you know, I have the script.
In my opinion, Snow Peak Ruins is the most unique dungeon in this game, as well as one of the most unique in the series.
Correct.
A mansion now abandoned and left exposed to the elements of Snow Peak, save for the Yeti couple who take up a small part of the building. By the time Link arrives in the Cold Mountains, he finds out from Yeto that one of the mirror shards was taken back to the mansion and given to his wife as a gift. But not long after, the place was overrun with monsters, with his wife suddenly becoming ill. He was hunting reekfish in Zora's domain to use in a soup for Yetta and invites you over to his mansion. After getting the key to the bedroom, as well as...
I'm not gonna lie, Yeto and Yetta are relationship goals. I'm sorry, but if you disagree, you have no heart.
Getting a bit sidetracked thanks to Yetta's
I have said what I
not-so-good
said.
memory, Link must battle against Yeto's wife, who has now transformed into the Twilight Ice Mask Blizzetta, all thanks to the dark powers of the mirror. The story does have a happy ending though, as both Yetis embrace and allow you to take the shard, essentially ridding the mansion of its curse. But who exactly owned this mansion? Certainly it wasn't the Yeti couple, as they seem to have moved in sometime after this place was left in ruins. One of the first things you notice about Snow Peak Ruins is that it's less of a traditional mansion, and more so a fortress.
I'm so sorry that you probably are hearing this in the fucking background. I'm trying to open this lollipop. Alright, where's it? It's a caramel, Mexican caramel lollipop. Sorry, my period's coming, okay? I'm hungry!
Rooms filled with military equipment such as weapons, shields, and armor. In fact, many of them are frozen into the ice itself. But when you consider the cannons found on the inside and outside of the mansion, as well as the 4 watchtowers, it certainly feels as if this place had more of an emphasis on defense rather than offense. The aesthetic of these rooms also greatly varies. Many of the hallways and chambers are built out of brick with minimal decoration, giving off a functionality over luxury feel, while others, such as the living room and bedroom, were clearly designed with overall comfort in mind. In addition, there's this crest plastered all over the stonework, shields, and numerous decorations littered throughout the Snow Peak ruins. This appears to be a sort of coat of arms or symbol belonging to Snow Peak Mansion, similar to how the Triforce paired with wings represents the royal family of Hyrule. On the topic of the royal family, it's possible that this mansion belonged to them, given all the military equipment. It might have been some sort of hideout for emergency purposes, especially during the Civil or Interloper War. Many groups had fought to establish dominion over the Sacred Realm and its Triforce. Not only would they be far away from any sort of danger, but the heavy defenses would guarantee that no threats made it as far as through the front door. As a matter of fact, in Twilight Princess HD, the Snow Peak crest can actually be found in the tower holding Princess Zelda. However, this is a detail only present in the Wii U version. Both the GameCube and Wii versions of the game instead have the crest of the royal family. And before you ask, this is not the case for Snow Peak Ruins. It still has that unique crest resembling a coat of arms, with 2 rapiers crossing blades. So what if this hideout wasn't owned by the royal family, but some other wealthy person or people, which had their own personal guard? The first person that comes to mind is Ashai, a member of the Resistance that helps Link with locating several dungeons in the game. Ashai grew up in the mountains with her father, who trained her in the arts of war. This aligns with what we see in the mansion, as it's filled with weapons, armor, and shields. However, she never specifies what mountain she grew up on, and never hints at Snow Peak Ruins once being her home. In fact, the closest she ever gets to the mountain is the entrance. But the Twilight Princess manga tells a different story. In it, Ashai says that the mansion used to be her home, and that it was eventually abandoned by her family.
Really?
Upon learning that a Yeti couple moved into the ruins, she was first wary of them, but allowed them to stay given their harmless nature. Now, it goes without saying that the manga is non-canon, however, I still wanted to include it in this video. Aside from that, it's hard to know who else could have owned the mansion, or if it had any special purposes aside from being a fortress. But there are some details worth mentioning. First are the snowflakes visible on the numerous banners, corners of the pushable blocks, and the bedroom door. This means that, at the time of the mansion's construction, these mountains were snowing. It's not like it happened all of a sudden sometime after this place was built. Second are the portraits found all throughout the Snow Peak ruins. Some of them are rather unexciting, such as pictures of Hyrule Castle, but ones worth mentioning include Queen Rutella, a figure which resembles the Sage of Light Rauru, the Sacred Grove, and City in the Sky. Now, firstly, we're shown what the Temple of Time grounds used to look like, and since this one is of how they appear in the present, it could be used as evidence to sort of get an idea of when this mansion may have been built. But of all the portraits shown, the one of the City in the Sky is definitely the strangest.
Sure.
If this capital is in the heavens, how could a picture of it end up in Snow Peak Ruins of all places? Well, perhaps the owner of this mansion is somehow related to a previous messenger of the heavens. Like previously mentioned, the royal family may have owned this mansion, and they were the ones the Uka were in contact with. Unfortunately, we're not given much, but even if this wasn't the case, there's also that picture of the Sacred Grove, another location which would not be so easily accessed by any normal individual. The last thing I want to mention regarding Snow Peak and all of its mysteries are the suits of armor found within the fortified mansion. They're far too big to fit Hylians, so are they only there for decoration purposes, or is there another reason? One thing we have yet to talk about is this dungeon's mini-boss, Darkhammer. In the hallway leading to one of the rooms, a statue comes to life and fights Link with a ball and chain. But when you look at this enemy, it's clearly not human. In fact, it appears to have a tail. It sort of makes me think of a mix between Lizalfos and Dodongo, and the armor fits it pretty well. In some ways, it's similar to the Darknut enemy, as well as the Dinalfos that you fight in the Temple of Time, which also happen to be very heavily armored. Now, this leads into more speculation territory, but perhaps there were some sort of experiments to use monsters as a sort of super soldier. It would explain the remote location, given how this would want to be done in secret, and even if someone did stumble across the mansion, it wouldn't look that suspicious at a first glance.
It's true.
And even if someone did investigate, the heavy defenses would quickly deal with any sort of threat or intruder. I did a video with Zeltic over on his channel covering Snow Peak, and it also talks a bit about this, so I'll have a link to that in the description below if anyone's interested.
Snow Peak is such an interesting temple. It really is.
Of all the dungeons listed here, the Temple of Time is by far the most interesting when it comes to lore and theories. I mean, it's the Temple of Time. And it just so happens that Twilight Princess's rendition of it is packed with details not seen in the other versions such as Ocarina of Times or Breath of the Wilds. Because unlike those two, this one comes with an entire dungeon. One thing that you'll quickly notice is that the layout of this temple is nearly identical to the one shown off in Ocarina of Time. In fact, the only major difference is the lack of the spiritual stone pedestal. It's also where the hero of Twilight goes to obtain the Master Sword. And don't let appearances deceive you, this is still within the Temple of Time. It's just that so much time has gone by that this area has fallen into ruin and decay. In order to see the temple in its full glory, Link must travel back through time to when this place was still standing. Doing so gives us a much better look at the interior, where the hero must return the blade to its pedestal to open the pathway to the inner dungeon. This is yet another connection to Ocarina of Time's Temple of Time, as that game's Master Sword was also found in the inner chambers. So it's possible that these two structures are actually meant to be the same. Nintendo even uses the exact same soundtrack for the temple in this game. We never get a look at the exterior of this place during this time, so perhaps the area was abandoned and the forest grew around the temple. However, there are some who believe that this is a different Temple of Time entirely. In a 2007 interview with Eiji Aonuma, he states that canonically, Twilight Princess is meant to take place around 100 and something years after Ocarina of Time. Could a forest of this size really grow in that amount of time? I mean, there's also the possibility of it somehow being moved into the woods, but it's hard to get into some other explanations without it falling into just heavy speculation.
Well,
On a side note, one theory people have regarding Navi's disappearance is that she entered this part of the dungeon. In the credits, you see her fly into this back window, and in Twilight Princess, the bit at the back is revealed to be an illusion hiding the entrance to the Temple of Time dungeon.
Shut the fuck up. I had not noticed that. I had not noticed that. What the fuck?
According to Russell, the Temple of Time was created by the ancestors of the Hylians, an ancient but sophisticated civilization which guards a sacred power. This is later revealed to be the Dominion Rod, an item that's used to control the many statues in the dungeon. According to legend, this rod was passed down by the Uka to the Hylians as a means of maintaining contact with the royal family of Hyrule. The one who held this rod, referred to
Berto. No, for real though, he's seeing shit that I'm not.
as the messenger to the heavens, would use it whenever the royal family wanted to communicate with the Uka. At the time, this race was no longer on Hyrule's surface, as they had used their technology to ascend to the heavens above. This capital city is later visited by the hero via a sky cannon to retrieve the final mirror of Twilight Shard. Now, while we will be covering some of the lore of the Uka and their technologies as it's closely tied to the Temple of Time, much of it is going to be saved from my video where we look further into the city in the sky as well as the other dungeons. Anyway, this all suggests that the Uka had a hand in the creation of the Temple of Time dungeon.
Poor choice of words, Bandit.
Not only is this
Why
temple
did we
built
get
around
a
the use of the
fucking
Dominion
close-up at the Uka tit? That's not what we're watching!
Rod, but there are also engravings into the side of the dungeon which depict several figures, one of which is holding the Dominion Rod, presumably the Messenger of the Heavens. Additionally, some script is found at the entrance before the Master Sword Chamber, and it translates to Sanctuary, Stone Statue, Master Sword, and Copy Rod, with the last one referring to the Dominion Rod and its ability to make statues mirror the hero's movement. This also might be related to why this temple was visited in the distant past. Following the completion of the Temple of Time dungeon and returning to the present, Uka states that the magic of the Dominion Rod has been exhausted due to it being around for quite some time. At this point in the game, you're required to seek out the Ancient Skybook, which is then used to restore the rod's powers. According to Impaz, her ancestors were tasked with guarding the book so that it could later be handed to the Messenger of the Heavens, the one who holds the Dominion Rod.
I don't enjoy that part of the game. The tedious looking for the statues part. I don't enjoy that part too much. But it is what it is.
This leads into another idea. Perhaps the ones who left these items had no knowledge of when the Messenger of the Heavens would receive them. By constructing the time door, it meant that even if the temple fell into ruins and the rod lost its power, that individual would still be capable of retrieving the Dominion Rod and using it to communicate with the Uka. I mean, they even hid some of the characters of the Skybook across Hyrule, beneath statues that could only be moved with the rod. It all seems very deliberate. Now, whether these individuals knew the events of Twilight Princess would happen or not and prepared for this outcome is, of course, debatable. We do have cases where individuals have prophetic visions, and in Breath of the Wild it's stated that the Sheikah were blessed with the sight of Goddess Hylia. But this is a topic better saved for a later date. It does make you question how a shard of the Mirror of Twilight made its way into the past. Maybe Goma grabbed it and somehow made its way through the door. It is rather interesting how similar this dungeon is to the Wind Waker's Tower of the Gods. Both areas utilize the mechanic of controlling statues while also having
Shut the fuck up. Why did that actually get me a little bit? I'm not gonna lie.
They're separate versions of Beamos and Armos. Plus, the Temple of Time is also a tower-like structure with a whopping 8 floors. Its entire puzzle revolves around Link climbing to the very top and bringing one of the statues all the way down to the first floor. There's also some similarity to the puzzles, as there are times when the player needs to escort statues to certain parts of the dungeon, and both feature weighing scale puzzles involving the use of these statues. Additionally, the platforms of light in the Tower of the Gods draw a parallel to the one granting access to the inner part.
But I'm not gonna lie, there is a similarity on the temples. They were both made around the same-ish time, but there is a similarity on the temples of the Earth Temple and the Time Temple. I'm noticing them now that they're pointing them out, but there is.
Part of Twilight Princess's Temple of Time dungeon. One other possibility, and one that has been frequently discussed online, is that this extension to the Temple of Time is actually the Temple of Light, a place only briefly seen in Ocarina of Time. It was located within the Sacred Realm, the resting place of the Triforce before it was taken by Ganondorf. The only room we ever get to see in this Temple of Light is the Chamber of Sages, and it's the only temple of the game where we're given its medallion without having to navigate any sort of dungeon, specifically the Light Medallion. In fact, this symbol is found all throughout the Temple of Time dungeon, and is the biggest piece of evidence which supports this theory. And Rauru is said to be the one who built the Temple of Time over the remains of the sealed temple, the Sage of, you guessed it, Light. The second key to this theory, quite literally, is the Master Sword. Link is required to thrust the blade back into its pedestal to activate the staircase leading to the Temple of Time dungeon. A staircase that, may I add, is made from light. It's not too different from how the Hero of Time entered the Sacred Realm, and thus the Temple of Light, by pulling the Master Sword from its pedestal. Whether this truly is meant to be the same place or not is up to the player, but it's very interesting nonetheless.
Wait, this video's already 20 minutes? We haven't even gotten to the Palace of Twilight yet. Let's be honest, of all the dungeons in the game...
Listen, I hate this fucking temple, but I am going to tell you why I hate it. I hate the fucking hand, the wall master-ish hand that follows you while you're trying to get the orb from one side to the other. It gives me anxiety. It makes me panic. I get war flashbacks. I hate it. I fucking hate it. Jesus Christ.
This is likely the one you know the most about when it comes to lore, since, you know, how much it plays into the main story of the game. So because of that, expect this one to be brief. We will go over some bits of it, but really my best recommendation is just to play Twilight Princess, as it's a fantastic game. To understand the lore of the Palace of Twilight means understanding the history of the Twilight Realm and events which led up to the banishment of the Interlopers. Back then, war broke out between those who wanted to establish dominion over the Sacred Realm and its treasure, the Triforce. Of these groups were the Interlopers, said to be powerful magic wielders. But these actions did not go unnoticed, and it wasn't long until the Light Spirits intervened, using the Mirror of Twilight to banish them within the Twilight Realm. These events led to their transformation into the Twilight Race. Now, despite being permanently banished to this realm of darkness, the Mirror of Twilight was left intact at Arbiter's grounds so that a link remained between these two worlds. But as time passed, this mirror became an execution method of sorts to send Hyrule's worst criminals away to the Twilight Realm. It's interesting to think about because this decision was essentially what led to Hyrule's ruin, with the banishment of Ganondorf after his failed execution. I don't think the Mirror of Twilight was ever intended to be used this way, so it's yet another example of the royal family's poor decisions. Fast forward to the moment Ganondorf enters the Twilight Realm, and this is where the events of Twilight Princess kick off. You see, the Twilight definitely learnt their mistakes which had led them here in the first place, and when they realized that Xant's lust for power could repeat said events, he was denied the throne. Ganondorf agreed to give the Usurper King the power he desired, but in exchange, he would fulfill the Demon King's request. To merge shadow and light, and make darkness. Almost immediately, Xant overthrew Midna and transformed his own people into shadow beasts, launching an attack on Hyrule and covering it with a blanket of twilight. He also shattered the Mirror of Twilight to cut off all connections to the realm. However, he could only break it into 4 pieces, for if one wanted to utterly destroy the mirror, one needed to be the true ruler of the Twilight. This is what makes a lot of this dungeon's lore in particular interesting. It's not the Palace of Twilight itself, but everything that led up to it, and how that shaped it to be what it is. This isn't just a dungeon, it's quite literally the home of this race. You can even see several floating islands in the distance, and given that it's possible to tame Kargaroks and fly with them, perhaps all of these landmasses also have residents. I mean, if this is the palace, then where exactly do these people live?
Sure.
It also means that when you fight the Shadow Beasts, you're essentially killing innocent civilians that were transformed into these monsters, all thanks to Xant's dark magic. One topic that's frequently discussed is the identity of the interlopers. Were they a single race? If so, what race was it? 2 of the most common answers thrown around are the Gerudo and Sheikah. Personally speaking, since the interlopers are described as a group of sorcerers, I think it's possible that it was a group consisting of multiple races. I do find the souls in particular to be very intriguing. According to Midna, these items are the equivalent of the sun in the quote-unquote world of light, meaning Hyrule. They're said to be the source of life for the Twilight, and bringing these orbs to the residents heals them of the Shadow Beast curse. When you try to take these out of the Palace of Twilight, Xant's hand pursues the player in an attempt to take it back. Not only is this a dungeon mechanic, as well as nightmare fuel, but it also makes sense since it acts as a sort of security system to make sure no one messes with the Usurper King's plans. One other noteworthy thing found in the dungeon is this dark, foggy stuff. If the souls are viewed as the son of the Twilight, this is the complete opposite. According to Midna, it's made up of the same crystal used to permanently curse Link in his wolf form, and running into the substance forces him to transform regardless of whether he's using the crystal or not. Given that the souls heal the Twilight, and that they also cut through this fog, it may have played a part in how Xant cursed his own people to become the Shadow Beasts. But, as always, who knows? And with that, I'm going to end the video here. Thank you for watching, and I'll have a link to Bandit's video in the description below.
You know, I'm surprised that they didn't, because they only explained 5 of them, but I don't see a second part here. So I don't know if they've done it yet. One second, I'm gonna turn on my heater because I'm dying of coldness. Right, so now we need to pick another. Now, this is a video that I saw earlier that had my attention a little. Ranking every 3D Zelda dungeon. I think it's nice because we can discuss what we feel about it. So I don't know if that's something you want to see, or if you want it. There's also one here. Let me move my camera so that you see, which is 100 lore and story secrets in Breath of the Wild, which is also probably freaking amazing. So which one do you guys prefer to see? The ranking one, or the 100 lore and story secrets in Breath of the Wild? To me, I love the idea of watching both of them. But just in case we don't have enough time, we should pick one because they're both chunky. They're both 40 minutes. And with how much we discuss, the second one, okay, because with how much we discuss, it's a little hard that we're gonna be able to watch both of them. We can watch one for sure, and then otherwise we save the rest for later. So this is 100 lore and story. 100 is a lot of freaking secrets. 100 secrets. Damn. All right. Well, let's see. Breath of the Wild secrets are very good to watch, especially right now, because we can start theorizing about Tears of the Kingdom. You know? So, it fits the excitement, in my opinion, too.
With Tears of the Kingdom now actually on the horizon with a release date next year, what better time to look back at Breath of the Wild's world and its secrets? Zelda games are deliberately ambiguous with their storytelling. The lore of the series is intricate and fascinating, but rarely is it explicitly told or shown to the player. Instead, a lot of the world building comes from piecing together little secrets and hints, and nowhere is this more important than in Breath of the Wild. Hyrule is ruined, but the story of the kingdom's fall happens a century before Link's adventure, so the details of this catastrophe are discovered only through memory cutscenes, item descriptions, some character dialogue, and the world itself. Let's have a look back at Breath of the Wild, and cover 100 little secrets that help us piece together the game's lore and Hyrule's backstory.
Alright. Such a peaceful game, this game.
By the time of Breath of the Wild, tens of thousands of years after any other Zelda game, there appears to have been a resurgence of faith in the goddess Hylia. However, the original 3 golden goddesses haven't been forgotten. We can see the symbols of Din, Nehru and Farore carved into the stone floor of the 3 small buildings outside of the Temple of Time. This is also the case with the symbol of the Triforce on the Temple of Time, which also features the Golden Goddesses' emblems on their respective pieces. Though goddess statues are found in every—
But here's a question though. Could these symbols be made not for the 3 goddesses, but for the dragons? Because the dragons are said to be servants of the goddess, but the dragons fit the description of the goddesses from Ocarina of Time. So what if those goddesses' shape is actually the dragon and the big god is actually Hylia? I don't know. I mean, it would kind of make sense.
Every town, faith in Hylia differs between the races. The Gerudo apparently once worshipped Hylia, but their belief faded over time, and their goddess statue sits forgotten in a back alley. The horned statue is found just outside of Hateno village, and will swap Link's heart containers and stamina vessels for a price. The statue explains that it was once a dealer in life and power, but fell out of favour with the goddess Hylia, who imprisoned it within the statue. The Knight's Claymore, a 2-handed sword apparently only used by the most confident of Hyrule Castle's knights, has a Triforce symbol just below the blade, and an inscription that reads, Hyrule Kingdom, Power, Wisdom, Courage. Compared to other games, there isn't a huge amount of Triforce symbolism in Breath of the Wild, but clearly its importance wasn't forgotten by the kingdom. The Great Plateau is a strange place. It's raised high above its surroundings, with huge stone walls built into its sides by Hylians. It's home to the ruined Temple of Time, which is strange enough considering how far the plateau is from Castletown, but what's even stranger is that it isn't far from Castletown at all. The plateau actually hides the ruins of Ocarina of Time's Castletown. We can see the central fountain and even the gate that used to lead to Hyrule Castle, although why the ruins of Castletown are found here is a mystery. On the ruined walls of the Great Plateau and the Castletown fountain, plaques read, "On this day, the King of Hyrule opened this structure to the public." Hylian retrievers can be found at stables. The Hyrule Compendium mentions that it said that all Hylian retrievers are descendants of a dog once owned by a king of Hyrule.
Oh.
The old man on the Great Plateau, who serves as a guide to Link when he awakens from the Shrine of Resurrection, is of course revealed to be the spirit of King Rome. There are a few hints to his secret before it's revealed. The music that plays when he paraglides down to meet Link is a sped up version of the classic Hyrule Castle theme.
I did know that. Yeah, it's a version of it.
And the old man carries with him a lantern on a stick, just like the Poes, which are spirits of the dead. The old man can be found at the highest peak on the Great Plateau, Mount Hylia, standing next to a strange collection of rocks. The file name for this object suggests that this rock is his tombstone, and this is backed up by creating a champion, which suggests that the Sheikah buried him here after he died during the calamity.
Right.
Supporting this is the fact that the graveyard outside Kakariko village is filled with these rocks, suggesting that this is how the Sheikah bury their dead.
I fucking told y'all. That's why the songs, even if they are a little different, you still feel the nostalgia feeling without knowing exactly why. It's true, it's because they're still there. Many songs are still there. Different, altered, but they're still there, man. They are.
Hidden in a secret room in the castle library is King Rome's journal, where Zelda's father laid out his thoughts and feelings mainly concerning his relationship with his daughter. He mentions how the looming threat of the calamity leads him to act as a king, not a father, when forcing Zelda to focus on awakening her latent powers instead of researching ancient technology. In the final entry, Rome notes a change of heart, that if Zelda returns from the Spring of Wisdom again unsuccessful in unlocking her power, he won't scold her, and will instead allow her to choose her own path, which is a heartbreaking detail considering Zelda never returned to her father. The calamity struck just after she prayed at the Spring of Wisdom. The book
I didn't know that. That's so fucking sad. I never noticed that. Aww.
Bookshelves in Hyrule Castle Library are organised by a sorting system. Plaques on the top have Hylian text which, when translated, give us what floor of the library we're on, either A for ground floor or B for first floor, then the letter the book's titles begin with. There's a secret passageway leading into the library from the east side of the castle, appropriately named the East Passage. There's a minecart through a cave, a Talus boss fight, then a steep shaft that leads up to the secret entrance to the castle library. Unlike most others, we actually know why this passageway exists. Ami at the Wetland Stable notes that the East Passage was built as an escape route for the royal family. Perhaps it saw some use during the calamity 100 years ago. The lockup below Hyrule Castle is a menagerie of Ganon's creatures. Cages keep Lizalfos and moblins imprisoned in the bowels of the fortress. There's even a Stalnox in a large chamber at the back, and it's from here that we can get an idea of what the lockup was for. A tablet behind the Stalnox reads, "Strike down the giant foe to become recognised as a knight of the kingdom." There's a broken platform that was presumably used to lower the Stalnox into the chamber.
So it used to be like a testing for the soldiers to get recognized as soldiers, like in the soldiership per se?
So perhaps the lockup was built to contain monsters for use in training Hyrule's military, with the strongest among them able to take on a Stalnox and earn the rank of knight. For the past century, the abandoned ruin of Hyrule Castle has been raided by the bravest, or stupidest, treasure hunters. Parsi at the Riverland Stable claims that she used to visit it to search for Royal Guard's equipment in the past when the castle wasn't as dangerous, and Molo at the Woodland Stable wonders if he should try to risk it, but that no one he knows who has gone there has come back. Probably just because they're too busy being rich. Akala Citadel is impossible to miss, a gigantic stone fortress built on top of, and into, a high cliff. It's a truly formidable castle, sporting cannons and multiple layers of defence, and, according to Nell, is where the Hyrulean army made their last stand against the calamity. The item description for luminous stones notes that many believe them to house the souls of the dead due to the eerie colour they glow at night, which is probably true. They glow just like the spirits of the champions and King Rome. And if that is true, then it makes Zora's domain pretty disturbing, as it's built out of massive quantities of luminous stone, and glows at night. The Zora set can be obtained around Zora's domain, and bestows Link with the abilities of a Zora. The tunic allows him to swim up waterfalls, the helm unlocks a spin attack, and the trousers increase swimming speed. Interestingly, the helm is apparently crafted using dragon scales. Scales are often given to Link to unlock Zora-like abilities in the water, like the silver and gold scales in Ocarina of Time or the water dragon scale in Skyward Sword, which also unlocks a spin attack. So it's not surprising that Breath of the Wild's Zora armor seems to work the same way. Scattered around Zora's domain are 10 carved stone monuments, immortalizing stories from the tribe's history. According to one, King Dorephan commissioned the monuments from a gifted stonemason, giving him a huge amount of notes to work with. The stonemason carved out 7 monuments from the king's notes, then added 3 more. One to celebrate the king's own victories, one for Prince Sidon, and one for himself. He notes that as long as he remembers to sign the monuments, his name will be remembered in history forever. He didn't do this, so his name is forgotten. Zora Monument 2 explains the history of the East Reservoir Lake, where Varuta is found. Apparently, every decade the Lanayru region suffers unusually heavy rainfall and flooding, and the Zora had to ask for aid from the King of Hyrule, resulting in a collaborative effort building the reservoir to contain the floods. Monument 7 is very worn, but we can still read the story. Over 100 years ago, Link saved Zora's domain by slaying the Lynel on Ploymus Mountain, a story also described in Mipha's diary. Addendum 2 tells us of a time when Hetano Bay was terrorized by a gigantic Octorok. Prince Sidon travelled south to slay the beast, and, after being swallowed whole, cut his way out from inside. Addendum 1 states that—
Okay, Kratos! The fuck? How have I not ever read that? Damn!
100 years after King Dorephan ascended to the Zora throne, sometime after the Great Calamity, a stray guardian wandered into their domain. It seemed unstoppable, its hull invulnerable to the Zora's sharpest spears. Hope seemed lost, until the king himself walked out to face the Sheikah machine. He lifted the guardian and hurled it into a ravine, shattering it, and his kingdom was saved. It's a great little backstory for the king, and just at the foot of the Lanayru Tower, in a ravine just outside Zora's domain, we can find the broken remains of a guardian.
Might be that
Perhaps the very same one defeated by the king.
That'd be cute, that'd be awesome.
When it rains in Hetano village, Karin heads into the chief's house and opens a storybook. It's drawn in a style very similar to that of the Wind Waker's introduction cutscene,
Yeah, for real.
and shows a crowned man in a blue shirt riding a horse towards Hyrule Castle. The text translates to, "Once upon a time there lived a prince. One day on his way to the castle, something strange happened." Who knows if this story is just a story, or if it's based on an event that really happened. At the climax of the Great Calamity 100 years ago, Zelda journeyed to Hyrule Castle, alone, to face the darkness. We know that she remained here for a century, keeping the beast sealed, but where actually is she? It seems the answer is that the princess was eaten by Ganon, and remained inside him for 100 years. When she speaks to Link, her voice comes from inside Ganon's cocoon, and she appears to burst out of Dark Beast Ganon at the end of the battle. Manny in Hetano village refers to Zelda as the princess who got swallowed up by the Calamity, and Robbie's memoirs state that 100 years ago, Calamity Ganon had
Oh my
already
God,
swallowed Princess
that's
Zelda.
Not a pleasant
When Link
place to be
finally
in for
reaches
100
the
years.
sanctum of Hyrule Castle to face Ganon, he's met with a horrific, writhing cocoon. The Calamity tears itself free and reveals that it's a chaotic splicing of malice and various Sheikah parts. Its Hyrule Compendium entry notes an interesting detail. Apparently, since Link awoke from the Shrine of Resurrection, it's been trying to build itself a new physical form, but was interrupted and forced to confront the hero while incomplete.
Interesting.
Rock salt can be found all across Hyrule, and curiously, its item description mentions that it is crystallized salt from the ancient sea. We don't know what ancient sea this refers to. As the salt can be found everywhere, the obvious candidate would be the Wind Waker's Great Sea, but it's left a mystery. Many item descriptions note that gemstones can harness the power of the elements. Sapphire contains the power of ice and can keep Link cool, Topaz has the power of electricity and can guard Link from lightning, rubies are linked with fire and keep Link warm, and so on. Throughout his quest, Link can find many elemental weapons,
They're awesome.
Arrows, swords and
The
spears
elemental weapons
imbued
are
with the power
awesome.
of fire, ice or lightning to use against Ganon's forces. The weapons Hyrule Compendium entries give us a little more information on how they were made. Frost weapons were made by smelting ore and ancient ice found in the permafrost of the Hebra Mountains. Thunder weapons forged by the Hyrulean royal family using lightning from the Hyrule Hills and Thundra Plateau, and fire weapons forged in the fires of Death Mountain by Goron smiths and unknown magicians in an ancient age.
Damn.
Just like in the Wind Waker, Link can pick up enemy weapons to use for himself. Moblins and Bokoblins use primitive clubs and spears made from wood, rope and animal bones, but Lizalfos and Lynels apparently have, or had, the technology required to forge their own metal equipment. The descriptions note that Lizalfos gear is poorly made, but Lynel tools are much sturdier. Killing monsters rewards Link with all sorts of gruesome treasures. Guts, toenails, tails and eyeballs. Interestingly, the descriptions for almost all of the monster guts mention how they continue to quiver even after the creature they belong to has died, and that this is what makes them useful when cooking.
That's a good
We
fucking
learn from
song.
cursed skull enemies that malice can keep monsters alive even when it should be impossible. So perhaps even when their bodies are destroyed, some parts of Ganon's minions can't die, and their organs continue to pulse and writhe.
Oh, good.
However, we do know that once defeated, the spirits of Ganon's monsters wander the land aimlessly, without a body, until their master's power surges with a blood moon and renews their flesh. Kilton will sell Link Monster Extract, mysterious vials full of a purple liquid. It's more than likely that this extract is a form of pure malice, the energy of Calamity Ganon. It's
Possible.
extracted from monsters, it's bright purple in colour, and the liquid moves by itself inside the vial. Introduced in Master Mode, golden enemies are a step above even the powerful Silver class. Their Hyrule Compendium entries note that they were once silver enemies, but were made stronger after having been struck by lightning.
Oh.
Many higher level monster weapons are reinforced with a material known as Dragon Bone, fossilized remains used to add strength and weight to crude clubs and spears. It's never explicitly stated where enemies get this Dragon Bone, or to which dragons the bones belonged, but it's possible that the giant skeletons that litter areas of Hyrule like the Gerudo Desert were known as dragons, and this is where enemies collect materials for their weapons. There's an area near Rito Village called Dragon Bone Mire. But separate from these giant remains are dragons Dinral, Nadra and Farosh, beings closely connected to the goddesses.
Or
They serve the
beings.
sacred springs of power, wisdom and courage. Their Hyrule Compendium entry strengthens the idea that they're not typical fauna, but something more divine. They're described as elemental spirits that have taken on the forms of dragons. The Dueling Peaks mark the entrance to the Necluda region, two huge mountains leaning into one another. According to Shay at the Lakeside Stable, the Dueling Peaks were once a single mountain, but it was
This fucking armor is awesome. The Dark Link, oh my god. The only problem is that it's so hard to get because it's fucking expensive on Kilton. But it's so good. I love it.
split in two by a dragon god long ago. It appears that the dragons can't be seen by most adult Hylians. Shay mentions that some people claim to have seen the shadow of a large creature over Lake Floria. Ron claims that in order to come face to face with one, you need the blessing of the goddess Hylia, and the rumor mill suggests that most eyewitness accounts of dragons come from children. The same is true for the Koroks. The first one Link finds will be surprised that a Hylian can see him, and Hestu claims that nobody has been able to see him for a century. It's likely that in order to see spirits like dragons and Koroks, one needs to be pure of heart, explaining why children seem to be able to see them. Breath of the Wild, rather infamously, has 900 hidden Koroks across Hyrule, finding each of which rewards Link with a Korok seed, which we learn from Hestu are the beads used in his magical maracas. We're not explicitly told what they actually are,
It's poop!
only that they have a distinct smell, but it's made clear after collecting them all. Hestu rewards Link with Hestu's Gift, an unusually shaped object that apparently smells pretty bad.
Nintendo really fucking trolled us with this. They really did, bro.
Hestu's gift is similar to a Kin no Unko, or Golden Poo, a symbol of good luck in Japan. And the game's director Hidemaru Fujibayashi confirmed in an interview that, yep, throughout Link's entire adventure, he's been collecting Korok Poo. The trunks of the Lost Woods trees are twisted into faces, and their gaping mouths occasionally hide treasure. According to Maka, these trees are known as ogre trees, or in the Japanese version, oni trees. The Forest Dweller's equipment is a set of gear apparently carved from the wood of trees that only grow in the Korok forest. Perhaps they're carved from ogre trees. Interestingly, the item descriptions note that the equipment was made by Koroks for Hylians, with the sword apparently once used to clear vines and forged paths through forests. Considering that, in a way, the Koroks are the forest, creating tools for Hylians to hack through their homeland seems strange, but it's an interesting bit of lore.
That is interesting.
At the woodland stable, Link can find Shamay, a young girl who talks about a land in the sky. This is most likely a nod to Skyloft and the floating islands of Skyward Sword, especially considering the
Or Tears of the Kingdom! Or both! We're gonna go find her. We're gonna go find her on my run through Breath of the Wild.
mention of riding a really big bird, but it takes on a new meaning now with Tears of the Kingdom.
Right.
The dragon bones aren't the only colossal fossils. There are also the 3 Leviathans. 2 of these line up almost exactly with giant creatures from Hyrule's history. The Eldin Leviathan matches with Levias from Skyward Sword, and the Gerudo Leviathan sports tiny wings on its back, matching with the Windfish from Link's Awakening.
It's true.
The 3rd fossil, however, is a mystery. In A Link to the Past, Zelda and Sahasrahla can speak to Link telepathically, and it's mentioned in Ocarina of Time that Hylians have long ears so that they can listen to the gods. Yunobo claims that he didn't know Hylians could do things like telepathy nowadays, but considering how Zelda can communicate with Link from Hyrule Castle, it seems that this ability hasn't been lost,
It's
just
true.
forgotten.
It's possible.
Just south of Hyrule Castle are the Ranch Ruins, the remains of a farmstead destroyed a century ago by
Lon
Ganon.
Lon Ranch,
The
bro.
ruins match up exactly with Ocarina of Time's Lon Lon Ranch, even
Exactly.
down to the buildings outside of the racetrack and the silo behind it.
Yep.
And all the way over in Hateno Village, Link can buy bottles of milk. But not just
Dude, I'm not gonna lie, I am dying to have some milk. I don't have any. I'm gonna have to go buy some.
any milk, Lon Lon milk, like that from Lon Lon Ranch in Ocarina of Time. According to the item description, the milk actually comes from Hateno Village cows and goats, but it's possible that the bottles are leftovers from the ruined ranch.
Could be.
It seems that the ability to slow down time when aiming and performing flurry rushes isn't just a gameplay mechanic, but an actual ability Link has in-universe. Tabor at the flight range mentions that when watching Link shoot, it was as if time slowed around him.
I do
And
remember
Daruk's
seeing this
training journal
recently.
notes that Link once said he felt like time slowed when he focused. Throughout the entire Zelda series, Link rarely has much of a family. An uncle in A Link to the Past, a grandma and a sister in The Wind Waker, an unseen mother in Ocarina of Time. We get a tiny bit of information on Link's father in Breath of the Wild. In a memory, Zelda mentions that his father was a Hylian knight. Another interesting detail is revealed by Zelda's diary. For the most part, Link is silent.
Real question though, who is Link? Is there a theory video on this? I'm not gonna close that video. We're gonna continue watching it, but I want to see who is Link's father. There is a theory. I don't know this guy.
He's not mute, we can see that he does speak with chat options, but in all of the memories he doesn't say a word. But the princess's diary reveals that Link chooses to stay silent in order to deal with the huge burden of being the hero. Also noted is a dream she had. A little while before she visits the Spring of Wisdom, she dreamed that she was in a place consumed by darkness, where a lone woman gazed at her.
I have a feeling, we saw this recently also, on the last time we saw the theory, we were looking at the theories, is that she's talking about how, oh my god, this is a problem where I wear black, bro. My face is like, whee! Anyways, she dreams about this place of being in darkness. Now, if you remember the trailer of Breath of the Wild, she falls into this pit of darkness and we don't see her again, on the trailer at least. Could this be it? And if this is it, who is the woman that talks to her?
Link chooses to stay silent in order to deal with the huge burden of being the hero. Also noted is a dream she had. A little while before she visits the Spring of Wisdom, she dreamed that she was in a place consumed by darkness, where a lone woman gazed at her, haloed by blinding light. Zelda sensed that this woman was not of this world, and she didn't know if she was a goddess, but she was beautiful. It's possible that this woman was a manifestation of the goddess Hylia, trying to communicate with her descendant through dreams. Fi is the spirit of the Master Sword introduced in Skyward Sword. At the end of the game, she begins a sleep without end inside the sword, explaining her absence throughout the Zelda timeline that follows on from the game. However, she's still within the sword by the time of Breath of the Wild.
I think she will continue
Fi
to be in the
speaks to
sword
Zelda
forever.
after Link falls defending Fort Hateno. There's a giant circular hole in Hebra Peak, and the stone inside this missing chunk is a strange, smooth texture, like it's been fused together. It's possible that this was the result of a divine beast's laser beam, perhaps during the battle against Ganon 10,000 years ago.
Could be, I never thought about
Monkton at the Snowfield stable tells the story of how he lost two childhood friends. One, he dared to enter the mysterious Lome Labyrinth to the north, and the other fell into Tanagar Canyon near the Forgotten Temple. He mentions that these childhood friends were horses, and even in his old age he still remembers them. Stables each feature a huge wooden horse head on top of the main tent, which allows travelers to see the signs of civilization from far away. Interestingly, the design of the horse head matches the face of Melania, the horse god.
That's probably
so
why.
perhaps there were religious reasons for building the stables with this design.
It could be.
The springs of
that.
power, wisdom, and courage all match almost exactly with the Skyview and Earth springs from Skyward Sword, suggesting that two of them are these very same locations, just thousands of years later.
Yup.
We can find other examples of stonework dating back to the time of Skyward Sword too, like the ancient columns near Rito Village and the Lineru Promenade, which both feature the leaf symbol found in the Skyview Temple and depictions of loft wings like those found in Sky Keep. The Forgotten Temple could be the ruins of Skyward Sword's sealed temple. Although the old man suggests that the Temple of Time and the Great Plateau was the birthplace of the Kingdom of Hyrule, the Forgotten Temple is home to what is apparently the oldest goddess statue. This crumbling ruin features ancient Hylian architecture, such as loft-wing designs,
like
and
a
the area
loft-wing.
in which the goddess statue stands matches the back of the sealed temple once Skyloft's goddess statue returns to the surface. We can spot the exact same walls, and even the sealed temple's pillars appear to have survived the millennia. Another landmark from Hyrule's history is found at Lake Hylia, the forgotten remains of Twilight Princess's Great Bridge. The flight range is where Revali trained at aerial combat, found just northwest of Rito Village. Revali's diary mentions that the flight range was built specifically for Revali as a reward for winning yet another archery competition before the Calamity. The paraglider, given to Link by King Rome, is one of the game's most important items, but we don't know much about it or how it came into the king's possession. We can guess who made it though. It features the symbol of the Rito tribe. It makes sense for a race of flying creatures to build a device that lets wingless beings soar through the sky like
Why would they do that though?
Across Hyrule, Link can find small campsites set up by other travelers. Some are still present at their camps, but many of the sites are now abandoned. Empty tents and extinguished fires are all that remains. These campsites show us that some travelers dared to explore even the most remote, dangerous places in the kingdom, like the North Lome Labyrinth. Dodongos and the other great beasts of Death Mountain appear to be extinct by the time of Breath of the Wild, but we can see evidence that they did exist at some point. There are colossal footprints on the volcano's rocky slopes. Goron City sits in the shadow of a huge carved mountain, like a Goron Mount Rushmore. It depicts Daruk, as you'd expect, but also a weird group of other Gorons. Gorkoron from Twilight Princess, and Darmani and the Goron Elder's son from Majora's Mask.
Aww.
In the Taubab grasslands, just east of the Gerudo Desert, Link can find and tame a giant horse.
Which, by the way, on the next stream that I play Breath of the Wild, we're gonna go get Ganon's horse and Zelda's ones too.
Far larger than any of its kin, with a black coat and a burning orange mane. Its compendium entry suggests that it is the last of its kind, and that it has an extremely wild temperament. It's possible that this is a descendant of Ganondorf's horse from Ocarina of Time, another huge stallion with black fur and an orange mane, presumably native to the Gerudo region. The Noble Canteen in Gerudo Town is famous for specialities like the Noble Pursuit, where Gerudo women come to have 1 or 2 drinks, just to wet the whistle. It seems their beverages aren't only enjoyed by the Gerudo, though. Cloyne in Lurelin Village sits on the floor enjoying a few bottles marked clearly with the Gerudo symbol, the same bottles drank in the Noble Canteen.
Very good.
The 7 Gerudo heroines are massive statues involved in a shrine quest. Their origin and purpose is unknown, and, strangely, an 8th heroine can be found all the way up in the Gerudo Highlands, alone. Even more mysterious is the fact that Gerudo text on each heroine statue translates to the 7 Sages, referring to the sacred group of chosen individuals that appear in multiple games in the series. If these 7 are depictions of the 7 Sages, then who's the 8th? The Gerudo are a race of warrior women, to whom a male is born only.
There is a theory about that. I'm gonna pull it up so we watch it later, because I don't remember. Yeah, right there. Monster Maze is awesome. We'll look at this one after.
Once a century. This man is destined to become their king, like we saw with Ganondorf in Ocarina of Time. However, creating a champion notes that there has been no male Gerudo leader since Ganondorf, so it seems that for tens of thousands of years, the Gerudo have ignored tradition, perhaps out of shame for the calamity being one of their own. It's possible that the Gerudo take their name from an ancient species of desert flower, or perhaps they simply once referred to themselves as metaphorical flowers. Many stone plaques throughout Gerudo areas mention this. For example, Riju's throne reads, Gerudo, a resilient desert flower facing the sun's gaze. Gerudo grows, brilliant, while others fade. In the eastern Gerudo Desert, Link can find a set of half-buried ruins called the Arbiter's Grounds, obviously a callback to the dungeon from Twilight Princess. Though the ruins don't match up well, perhaps this is all that remains of the execution grounds. Zelda's mother died when the princess was only 6, so we never see Hyrule's queen. But she's an important—
Why is Zelda's mom dead? Suggesting it was illness or accidental. Yeah, there's no data. There's no data about it at all.
Part of the story, not just for Zelda, but for the Gerudo champion Urbosa too. Both her diary and her champion's ballad Memory show that the two had a very close friendship, which explains why Urbosa becomes so protective of Zelda. Link eventually tracks the Yiga clan down to their hideout to the north of the Gerudo Desert. They've set up in the ruins of an ancient temple, but it wasn't built by the Yiga or even the Sheikah. It's clearly Gerudo in origin, with statues of the 7 heroines guarding the entrance. When Yiga foot soldiers fight, they'll occasionally project a ring of symbols around themselves, which matches the Kujin, or 9-syllable seals, which you might have seen used in anime like Naruto. Interestingly, Monk Mazkoshia also uses this technique, showing that the Yiga fight using the same abilities as the powerful ancient Sheikah monks. The ancient tapestry depicts the war against Calamity Ganon 10,000 years ago, and how the Sheikah's technological prowess was used against it. Obviously, it shows Link and Zelda backed up by the 4 divine beasts and an army of guardians, but also Sheikah monks. So the battle against the last Calamity wasn't fought just by machines, but the Sheikah themselves. We've seen just how powerful a single monk can be with the fight against Monk Mazkoshia, but here we see dozens of them fighting together against the darkness. The 7 monks at the end of the Trial of the Sword perform the same poses as Ocarina of Time's sages, suggesting that they carry out a similar purpose. Completing a shrine rewards Link with a spirit orb, but what actually are they? Well, considering that they're called spirit orbs and are given to Link by the monks just before they fade away into the green-blue light of spirits, it's possible that each monk gives Link their spiritual essence, their soul, before passing away. Which would be very fitting, considering that Link then delivers these spirits to Hylia herself at goddess statues.
Oh,
Once they're
shit! I hadn't really noticed that, but that one does make sense. That one does make sense.
Completed, the ancient monks' souls are offered up to their goddess. It seems a different kind of spirit orb was used by the ancient Zonai tribe. At Thundra Plateau, a monk's voice asks Link to place the 4 spirits in their proper places, referring to the coloured orbs scattered around the area. If these are some sort of spirits, then it's likely that other Zonai orbs are too, like the ones found at the 7 heroines. Olkin in Kakariko Village tells Link a story of how, long ago, a wise master simply known as the Swordsman was enshrined in the village, and that he offers a trial to teach mastery of offense and defense. This is referring to Monk Talon Neig's shrine just outside of the village, which teaches the basics of combat. But it's interesting that we learn a little bit about the history of a Sheikah monk before they sealed themselves in the shrine. Though the Sheikah found in Kakariko Village return to a rural way of life, they still possess secrets and relics from their technologically advanced past, like the clothes the villagers wear, which use ancient technology to keep the wearer dry and even protect against lightning, though only Sheikah are permitted to wear them. Link is allowed to buy and wear Sheikah stealth gear though, which also uses ancient technology, this time to suppress noise. As the Kakariko Sheikah have lost their advanced technology, the stealth outfit has been passed down through the generations.
It's my absolute favorite.
Kado manages the cuckoos in Kakariko Village. He was married to Rola, but his obsession with the birds became too much for her.
Right.
She gave him an ultimatum, her or the cuckoos. He chose the cuckoos. The mysterious energy harnessed by the Sheikah to power their machines apparently comes from deep below the ground. Pools of it are found in East Nakluda and Deep Akala, where the 2 tech labs were set up, and apparently deep below Hyrule Castle too. Pura's diary mentions that she installed her anti-aging rune onto a Sheikah slate that she made for herself. Perhaps that's what the mysterious box and glasses are that both Robbie and Pura wear, some sort of wearable Sheikah slate. Ancient arrows are powerful Sheikah blades crudely strapped to modern arrow shafts, and the descriptions for bundles of them note that they are repurposed ancient daggers. Creating a champion suggests that when Link activates the Sheikah Tower on the Great Plateau, it sends a signal to Hyrule Castle, which in turn acts as a central control unit and sends activation signals out to the shrines and remaining towers. The Royal Guard's sword is apparently a Sheikah-made replica of the Master Sword.
Even Ganon is afraid of the cuckoos? Absolutely! Who the fuck is not afraid of them? Jesus Christ!
Forged with ancient technology to oppose the Calamity. Its design is similar to the Blade of Evil's Bane, but a design flaw made it too brittle for prolonged combat. The Hateno Tech Lab is packed with ancient Sheikah relics, like half-assembled guardians, Sheikah slate pedestals, and even what looks like a miniature divine beast shaped like a manta ray hanging from the ceiling.
Or like a whale, no?
On the night Hyrule fell, just as villagers burned in their homes, the 4 champions died trapped in their divine beasts, alone. And in the music for each of the Divine Beast dungeons, we can hear what might have been the champions' desperate last messages. Each theme hides Morse code spelling out SOS, a call for help that went unanswered.
Are you fucking joking?
Spelling. And in the music for each of the Divine Beast dungeons, we can hear what might have been the champions' desperate last messages. Each theme hides Morse code spelling out SOS, a call for help that went unanswered. The 4 Blight Ganons are
What the fuck? I didn't know that shit.
Phantoms
That's
of the
awesome.
Calamity.
That's such a cute little detail from Nintendo to have put in.
small portions
not
of
really
his
cute.
power used to slay
More
the
creepy,
champions
but-
and take control of their machines. They take the form of malice fused with ancient technology, though, curiously, each Blight wields a Sheikah version of the signature weapon of their respective champion. Fire Blight uses a greatsword like Daruk, Thunder Blight a sword and shield like Urbosa, Water Blight a spear like Mipha, and Wind Blight a ranged weapon like Revali. These ancient weapons were built by the Sheikah and then hijacked by Ganon, but they're far too large to have been intended for use by the champions, so their origins and purpose is a strange mystery. The Champions
Ganon
Ballads
copied them.
DLC ends with a final, happy memory of the champions, together with Zelda and Link, taking a group photo with the Sheikah slate. We're never shown who was behind the camera here, but we can make a good guess. It's a
Robbie.
woman who calls out
Ah,
click,
Pura.
snap, just as she takes the photo, just like Pura does in the present.
Yeah.
The Sheikah slate is perhaps the single most important item in Breath of the Wild, but we don't actually know its name. Zelda's research notes mention that she and her team uncovered the slate, but that there was no mention of a name for the object in any records they had so far unearthed. The name Sheikah Slate was apparently coined by Pura, as it's literally a slate made by the Sheikah.
You see?
Dark Beast Ganon could be harmed only by sacred weapons. The Bow of Light, the Amiibo Twilight Bow, beams from the Master Sword, and ancient arrows, suggesting that ancient Sheikah technology could have divine origins. The Hyrule Compendium notes that most Sheikah weapons have a single bladed edge. This type of sword was unfamiliar to Hylian fighters, and so the Edge of Duality was designed by the Sheikah to be used by Hylian knights. Robbie's Ancient Oven, the device that makes ancient soldier gear and weapons, was originally a guidance stone. Robbie remodeled it and named it Cherry after the first girl he ever loved, and with the help of his wife Jerin, gave it the ability to speak. Cherry was able to speak just as well as a native Hylian, to answer questions and ask them as if she was a real person. Over
Listen,
time,
shut up, okay? Imagine you're the wife of this guy, and he's like, I am making this awesome machine. And she's like, cool. And it's like, and I'm gonna name her after my first love, Cherry. The fuck? That's not nice. The poor wife. That's not nice. Unless she came after. Like, the wife came in after he had already made it. But, like, I don't fucking know. It's like making a son. Like, having a child and be like, I'm gonna name him the name of my first ex. The fuck? No! No! Robbie, no! That's
though,
not cool.
Jerin grew jealous of Robbie's relationship with Cherry, and so the machine was reverted back to a mechanical way of speaking.
There you go.
Sheikah architecture is covered in constellation patterns, and the room in which Link fights Calamity Ganon is apparently called the Astral Observatory, depicting Hyrule and its stars. Both ancient tech labs feature huge Sheikah telescopes. Clearly, the Sheikah were fascinated by the stars above. It's possible that they predicted the future through astrology, like the prophet Astor in Age of Calamity, who uses a Sheikah device which projects constellations to see the future. The Astral Observatory map of Hyrule depicts various landmarks, like Dueling Peaks, Death Mountain, and the 4 Divine Beasts. But interestingly, we can also see the Lord of the Mountain over on Satori Mountain, which tells us 2 things. First, that the Lord of the Mountain was around over 10,000 years ago
the Lord of the
alongside
Mountain's
ancient
probably been there
Sheikah,
since,
and
like,
second,
Skyward
that the
Sword,
Sheikah considered it important enough to include in this rune. Though the Lord of the Mountain is a sacred being, it can be dangerous to those who threaten its domain. Quince can be found at the Wetland Stable, who tells a story of how he took a nap while hunting on Satori Mountain, and later woke to find the spirits charging at him, and was saved only by the bravery of his dog, Sati.
Scary.
So there you are, 100 little lore details about Breath of the Wild. It goes without saying that So there you are.
Alright. So then we're gonna see this one. Yeah, let's see this one. See where we end. It's interesting. The theories, they're cute. The amount of detail that went into making Breath of the Wild, it's really no wonder they delayed it like 5 times. Yeah, that's all I'm gonna say.
The mystery of the 8th heroine is one of the most equivocal.
I'm not gonna lie, I hope that we have the same fucking level of detail, new details on the new game. That is the only thing that is going to allow me to forgive them for delaying the game as much as they did.
Unsolved riddles in Breath
I
of
don't
the
give a shit about
Wild.
COVID.
Also referred to by its nickname,
Not a
the
valid
Bronze
excuse.
Giant, due to the color of the rock it's carved from. The statue, as it stands tucked away from view in the Gerudo Highlands, remains an enigma to this day. Who built it? In whose honor? And why here on a remote cliffside in such an unforgiving climate? Why have they been wiped from history as the in-game dialogue and quest log suggest? Ever since the game's launch in 2017, there have been many attempts to piece together its origin, its meaning, and moreover, its identity. And there's no shortage of creative, well-researched ideas and theories about this captivating mystery. Unfortunately, none have been able to find the evidence needed to seal the deal, so to speak, as the game nor the book provide sufficient information to work with. And so, just like with the mystery of the Zonai, we'll likely have to wait for the sequel to hopefully shed more light on it and give us the answers we crave. But before that moment arrives, I want to revisit this mystery one last time, to see if I can offer a new perspective on this ancient riddle now that we have more information about the sequel. And to help me drive this idea into your eyes and ears, I have invited my good friend Conrad from the Commonwealth Realm, one of the OG Breath of the Wild theorists on the platform. Ladies and gentlemen, we present to you what I believe to be the true face of the 8th heroine, Patricia the Sand Seal. Alright, I'm kidding. It's actually this one.
What?
Let's start with a brief recap of the mystery behind the statue, or should I say,
I don't know the voice of
statues.
this guy.
Yes, as you probably surmised from the 8 in the name, it's not the only statue out there. The other 7 are located in the eastern part of the scorching desert. And as opposed to the elusive bronze giant, these statues are well known and even revered by the Gerudo themselves. They are believed to represent 7 important historical figures who each possessed a particular skill. And due to the successful translation of the text featuring on the magnificent stoneworks, we know that they represent none other than the mythical 7 sages, a group of individuals who repeatedly awaken in times of hardship to help the hero and princess fend off the evil tormenting Hyrule, many a time involving Ganondorf or his alter ego, Ganon. It seems the ancient Gerudo wanted to memorialize the sages, and thus they erected these massive stone monuments in their honor. Although the existence of the 7 are common knowledge among the present-day Gerudo, their actual meaning, implication, and history seem to have been all but lost to the women of the desert. They don't know who each individual statue represents, nor do they even refer to them as sages. The archaeologist in Gerudo Town who studies the monuments named Hana refers to them as the divine protectors of the Gerudo. It even implies the Gerudo believe them to be all female warriors, even though the 7 sages have historically been a mix of many different races and genders. It shows that while her research is slowly progressing, her deeper understanding is still rife with misinterpretation and bias. Viewing them from the perspective of the Garuda alone.
You were so calm. And you just fucked me up. Yes. But it's okay. It's alright. It's no problem. Cheers.
And not from Hyrule's combined history and culture. This is not surprising though. Both the ancient and present day Garuda are very particular about the memorials to historical figures. Not only are they all portrayed as female, presumably in their own image, but they are also left nameless and are instead inscribed with poetry or singular adjectives like vigilant. It's no wonder why the identity of these figures are eventually forgotten as the ages creep by. The existence of the 8th heroine, on the other hand, seemed to be completely unknown to the present-day Garuda, or at the very least written off as nothing more than an urban legend. One description even mentions that the remote section of the highlands where the statue resides is one that the Garuda dare not set foot in because of the many dangers, including the extreme weather conditions. As such, none of the Garuda who are alive today have ever laid eyes upon the 8th heroine, let alone known who or what it is supposed to personify. When it comes to the ancient Garuda, however, it is a different story. It's all but certain that they were well aware of an 8th heroine. Not only are they the most likely candidate for its construction, seeing as the architecture is close to identical to the other 7, but the Yiga clan hideout, which is confirmed to be an ancient Garuda archaeological site, features 8 similar looking statues facing each other in a circle.
Not 7.
Likewise, we can see that the 7 massive monuments tucked away inside the desert have an empty space that would have fit an 8th statue perfectly. One final detail about the 8th heroine is that the sword they are supposed to clench onto, as seen on the other 7, is missing from the statue itself,
It's
and can
like
instead be
fucking
found
all the
atop the
other way.
summit of the highlands not far away.
Yeah.
For what reason? No one knows for sure.
Nope.
So these are some of the basic facts about the statues. There is a bit more to it, but we'll cover those as we go along. Given how few people seem to be aware of the existence of the 8th heroine, it's hard to pinpoint its exact placement in Hyrule's history, or which parts of the rumors about it are true or false, especially when the culture that supposedly built it seems completely oblivious to it and thus cannot...
Could the 8th heroine, hear me out, could the 8th heroine be Zelda? Like on the past? Because you know there were all the sages, but they also Zelda and Sheik version also, for example, helped a lot, particularly on Ocarina of Time. Like Sheik / Zelda could very much be considered potentially a heroine. So, could it just be her?
provide us any insight. I joked before about Patricia, but she's actually one of only 2 beings in the world who mention the 8th heroine by name through dialogue. The other being Bozai, you know, the creepy guy who tries to get into Link's pants and gives you the quest to seek out the statue. Not even the town archaeologist who, I remind you, actively studies the history of the 7 heroines every day, ever even mentions the rumors about an 8th statue. In the case of Bozai, I can understand why he would know about it since he is a Hylian. He says he's been intrigued by the stories of an 8th heroine ever since he was a child, so apparently it is a legend that some Hylians dare speak of. But how in the heck does the pet seal belonging to the leader of the Gerudo know about it? And why has no one ever caught on to the fact? Even the woman who interprets her words of wisdom doesn't even flinch when mentioning the 8th heroine. Look at her, she's completely unfazed. I mean, come on lady, it's a central part of your religion. This would be like if a Christian found out there were secretly 11 commandments, but I don't know, Moses lost one on the way down from the mountain. Anyway, there's 2 important details which have given shape to many similar theories and verdicts about the nature and identity of the 8th heroine. First is the claim that, as stated before, the statue itself as well as the person it embodies have been wiped clean from history. And second is a quest log that says that despite being lost in memory, she is still worshipped to this day by her faithful in the Gerudo Highlands. Now, the only faction we know that lives in the Highlands are, of course, the Yiga, who have been fiercely loyal to Ganon ever since they seceded from the Sheikah 10,000 years ago. The fact that the...
So you think the 8th heroine is Ganon? Listen, it's possible. Because why else would they, like, rip it off and take it away and push it away from the religion unless it was supposed to show Ganon and they wanted to reject
The 8th heroine
that.
has been wiped from history, yet is still worshipped by what is essentially a Ganon cult, has led many to believe that this individual could have been on the wrong side of history and possibly involved in some nefarious act. Perhaps a sage gone rogue who betrayed the other 7, or, as some suggest, it may even be a memorial to Ganon himself.
Right.
Why else would the Yiga, of all people, pay homage to this forgotten idol? There's a piece of NPC dialogue that reiterates the same basic concept as the quest log, except here, instead of calling them her faithful, faithful, it instead refers to them as the people who hang around the Gerudo Highlands, which further reinforces that this would indeed have to be the Yiga, as they and they alone fit the description. The game generally doesn't refer to things like monsters or wildlife as people. There is, however, one problem, one that has plagued the Zelda series for decades and continues to do so here: localization differences. The original Japanese text never actually refers to these mystery worshippers as her faithful, nor as the people who hang around the Gerudo Highlands. It simply says her followers instead. On the surface, this may seem like a very minor difference, but for a theory, this can have massive repercussions. The English text advocates that these devotees are human beings, which inadvertently eliminates any alternatives, because, like I said, as far as people go, there are none who hang around these parts in the present day. No one but the Yiga. Well, and Link, but he doesn't count. Meanwhile, the Japanese text keeps it ambiguous. After all, followers can apply to anyone, really. Anyone who's sentient, anyway. I believe that this tiny, seemingly harmless translation difference may just be responsible for limiting our perspective on the mystery of the 8th heroine, since what if this isn't referring to the Yiga at all, but instead someone else? The Yiga have never been a very logical choice to me, despite the English text insisting that they are. They don't seem to concern themselves at all with the reverence of ancient monuments, especially those belonging to other cultures. In fact, they appear to be completely indifferent, even downright disrespectful towards them. For example, the statues located in their hideout, which features the 8th one, all have their face dishonorably covered in drapes, which displays their insignia. No doubt intended as a giant middle finger to the Gerudo, who they are still at war with. They do the same thing to Sheikah idols too, by the way. I see no evidence that they held these monuments in any sort of high regard, so why would they venture out into the frigid cold to worship this one? Sure, their hideout is in the highlands, but it's still quite the expedition to get to the 8th heroine. Another aspect that potentially works against the Yiga is the extreme secrecy behind the statue, as well as the timeline of events. What's quite distinctive about the statue is that, unlike the site of the 7 heroines, it doesn't feature a Sheikah shrine. The ancient Sheikah constructed their shrines all over Hyrule, in the most obscure, secretive, oldest sites imaginable. Find an ancient ruin, chances are there's gonna be a shrine nearby, even in structures that stem from the time of Skyward Sword, which is an insanely long time ago. So why not here? Could it be that even the Sheikah from 10,000 years ago were oblivious to the 8th statue? If so, how would the Yiga know where it is, let alone who the statue represents? The clan didn't form until after the calamity of 10,000 years ago, when the king of Hyrule started persecuting the Sheikah and their technology. If we stick by the Japanese text and assume that these so-called followers are not necessarily human beings, more options suddenly become available, and one in particular stands out as a prime candidate for me, especially in context with the sequel. An intelligent being who's not only present in the Highlands, but one that actually visits the area in and around the 8th heroine frequently. Despite originating from the Faron region, the lightning spirit Farash has 2 secondary flight paths, one at Lake Hylia and the other sees it snaking around the Gerudo Highlands, drifting in from the southern part of the mountain range, right past the Forgotten Sword, makes its way close to the top of the statue, then travels in between the statue and the sword, after which it curves back around the summit for subsequent visits until finally taking off into the heavens at some point. But it gets even better, because now take a look at the flight path of Dinral, the fire dragon from the Elden region. After spawning and passing along the back of the volcano, it heads southwest, then makes a straight shot through the canyon towards the cliffside where the statue is located, until it too decides to call it a day and head for the clouds. I'd say it almost looks like it's on a pilgrimage of sorts. The only dragon who doesn't exert a similar behavior is Naydra, and while that does somewhat weaken the argument for a statue worshipping ceremony by the dragons, we do have to keep in mind that Naydra has been incapacitated by Ganon for what we can presume to be a considerable amount of time before Link wakes up from his stasis, and depending on the order in which you explore Hyrule, it remains trapped on the mountain until Link finally cures its affliction. A valid enough excuse to skip daily service for a while, I suppose.
With that said, what could the ancient dragon spirits who have been around since time immemorial possibly want with a statue like this? Well, that all depends on what the secret identity behind this monument is. If it is someone they knew well, or as the in-game text suggests, followed, it would make perfect sense for the dragon spirits to pay their respects to them, especially if said individual died or sacrificed themselves for a greater purpose in the distant past. As mighty and majestic as the dragons may appear, they are not above gods, sages, contemporary spirit guardians, or other types of deities. In Skyward Sword, for example, they control parts of their respective provinces, but did so in the service of God.
Imagine the people that are doing these theory videos speaking about conspiracy theories. Dude, that'd be fire! I'd listen. Listen, I hate fucking conspiracy theories, but I'd listen to them talk about it. You know that for sure.
We appointed them to protect the surface.
I absolutely would.
And here's where another major difference in the localization comes into play.
Absolutely
The nickname
would.
of the 8th heroine we have been reiterating throughout the video is actually not accurate to the original Japanese name. There, it is the copper giant, Goddess. You can see the impact of omitting a single word, as it makes a world of difference. As opposed to just another sage, this statue is hinted to be a tribute to a goddess of sorts, which is not nearly on the same level as a sage.
No.
This brings us to the latest footage for Tears of the Kingdom. The figure depicted on the mural definitely fits the characteristics of a deity. They appear to reside high in the heavens, suspended on a floating platform with rays of light shining down upon them.
It could
More
be. It would be
importantly, the
very
seven
cool.
orb-like artifacts that surround them could reinforce a connection between this entity
be
and
very
7
cool.
other beings.
If she
The
was the
aforementioned
8th heroine.
sages, perhaps, just like we see with the statues, 8 in total, with one different from the rest. Speaking of differences, there's one more feature about the 8th statue we haven't mentioned so far. It's not just that the material is different and the sword is missing, but it also happens to be a mirrored version of the other 7 monuments. And lo and behold, what do we see on the mural? 2 depictions of the same symbol, mirroring each other. One on the side of what is presumably to be an incarnation of Zelda, which matches the symbol on the orbs, and the mirror opposite on the side of this deity figure. A coincidence? It definitely could be, but if it is a very interesting coincidence. If this theory is correct, and the dragons are indeed the ones worshipping the 8th heroine statue instead of the Yiga, naturally the obvious candidate to shoot for will be Goddess Hylia, given the history between her and the dragon spirits. And it very well could be, but we certainly shouldn't rule out other possibilities as well. There's a good chance that this is a brand new deity whom we have never seen or met before.
It could be.
Let's wrap up the video with a final piece of conjecture, one that my guest speaker may not resonate with, so I want to make it clear that these are my thoughts and mine alone. Whoever or whatever this creature on the mural ends up being, chances are we probably won't get any decisive answers until we actually, play Tears of the Kingdom. In that sense, the mystery behind the 8th heroine remains for now. However, I do have a strong conviction that this character and the 8th heroine are likely one and the same. There's just too many overlapping themes and coincidences for me to ignore. In fact, I would take it a step further and say that the spectral being who has Ganondorf pinned down and sealed deep underground may also be connected to it. It definitely has a spiritual, out-of-this-world kind of look and feel to it, so maybe the green hand that remains is what's left of this ancient deity. The figure on the mural is shown to be pretty huge in comparison to a regular human, or at least compared to Zelda if this is indeed her. Now look at the size comparison between Link's hand and the one belonging to this entity. It's like twice the size.
Yeah,
Whatever this creature
more.
used to be, it too must have been pretty big. When Link absorbs the green energy, the entity seems to pass its essence down to the hero, which explains why he can suddenly conjure up these almost godlike powers, like the ability to control time or become incorporeal and move through solid matter. In context with today's subject, it would also clarify why this individual has been completely forgotten over the course of history. Perhaps long ago they sacrificed their very existence to keep Ganondorf's physical body from being set loose upon Hyrule once again. They were then memorialized in stone by the ancients, but as the years crept by, the memory of their sacrifice and even their very identity was slowly lost to time, which is a common occurrence in the land of Hyrule. It only took 10,000 years for the calamity to completely fade into myth, which, mind you, was a huge battle involving giant robots, and whatever transpired back when Ganondorf was still human clearly took place much, much longer ago. And that wraps up today's video. If you liked it, please be sure to check out Conrad's video as well over on his channel, The Commonwealth Road.
Oh, it's interesting. Oh, look at this one. Let's watch this one and wrap up the stream for today. Secrets on the Surface, Tears of the Kingdom Theories. I'm in. I'm in. I am so in. Let's see this before we end the stream. Whoever animated this, well fucking done, man.
If there's one thing Nintendo has become increasingly efficient at, it's their ability to obscure lore and story details in their Zelda trailers. They show just enough to get people talking.
Okay, it did get me. I'm not gonna lie, because I was tense from the trailer. It did get me. It did get me a little bit, Luca. I'm not gonna lie. Hello, by the way. How are you? Everything's okay? I hope it is. Fuck!
Talking while at the same time preserving a high degree of ambiguity to keep us guessing. It's no exaggeration to say that we could easily have a 2-hour discussion on just who this one character is supposed to be. Is it Hylia? An ancient hero? A Ganondorf? Tingle?
Hey, Luca, thank you. Hi! Thank you so much for the subscription gift. Thank you so much. You're so sweet. How are you
Or
today?
judging by
Everything
Nintendo's
okay?
track
Hydrating.
record, it could be a completely new character. One we've never seen before, and so all our theories go out the window. No
Bitch, if it's midnight, I'm going to cry. I'm gonna cry all the tears in my body, I swear.
matter how
It's not.
confident
I
you are in
doubt
your
it.
own assessments, it's safe to say that
I'm
for now
good.
all we have
Thank
is
you for
best
asking. I'm
guesses,
good.
as the characters depicted are purposely designed in a way
tired,
that
but
makes
I'm
them
good.
unlike anything we can immediately recognize from previous titles. I've been staring at screenshots for hours, and while I do have my own ideas and suspicions, so far I've been unable to find substantial evidence that nails it down. So for today's video, let's put this part of the lore aside for a moment and focus on something else. A far more important question, perhaps. Why do bokoblins and moblins suddenly have massive penises? Today we're talking about the surface world of Tears of the Kingdom, which as we all know is basically a rehash of the landscape we explored in the previous title. PR-wise, Tears of the Kingdom's main focus ever since the 2021 teaser has been on the skies above the ill-fated kingdom, which is now littered with these majestic floating landmasses that have seemingly sprung up from nowhere. Even the official artwork, including the box art, emphasized that in Tears of the Kingdom, the sky is where it's at. There's been a couple of video analyses which focus on the differences between Breath of the Wild's overworld and the one seen in Tears of the Kingdom. In conclusion, well, aside from a few notable changes to specific landmarks, the two aren't all that different, almost identical even. So what purpose does the surface have left, besides providing solid footing when you're not soaring in the skies above? Of course, it is from ground level that we'll be gaining access to some of the islands, as seen in the example where Link rewinds a piece of fallen sky debris and rides it up to the island it originated from. But this is just a means by which to escape the surface, so what about Hyrule itself? Are there new things to explore here? New dungeons and challenges? 9,000 Korok seeds this time?
No! God, please, no!
Right.
No!
No!
I think there may be a lot more to Hyrule's surface than the promotional material has let on so far. Though it may look very similar from a distance, you can't judge a book by its cover. So let's go over some of the possibilities. Do keep in mind that just like with the main story, most of what I'm about to talk about is highly speculative and may not reflect the final product. In fact, it probably won't. With that said, let's get into it. In the footage presented so far, Tears of the Kingdom's surface has been shown quite sparingly, and when it does show up, it's in specific lighting and from clever camera angles that make it difficult to see the finer details.
Yeah.
Despite this, we have been able to spot a few changes over the past years, ever since the game's reveal in 2019. The most notable of which are that the Sheikah Towers and shrines are no longer present, Hyrule Castle has been ripped from its foundation and is now suspended in the air by Ganon's malice, the
The towers are no longer present? Dude, I didn't know about that. I didn't notice that.
tree and possibly the entire Great Forest
I
are
didn't
no
know that.
longer where they should be. There are strange pieces of debris scattered about which weren't there before, and Death Mountain's lava flow has seemingly run dry. The mystery behind the last two of these observations have now been cleared up by the third teaser. The unknown debris is confirmed to originate from the floating islands, and as mentioned before, you can use them to hitch a ride up. Death Mountain has dried up because it's plugged up by malice, which can be seen boiling up from the summit. But there's another big change which a lot of people initially missed, for good reason, because it's not actually shown in the teaser itself, but instead in the official artwork Nintendo made public shortly after the teaser went live. Here too we see the malice-written Death Mountain, the floating Hyrule Castle, and another peculiar sight. A gigantic vortex covering a large area west of the castle. Judging from the size comparison to the other two landmarks, this storm has to be about the same size, if not bigger, than Death Mountain itself, which on its own is so massive that it almost takes up an entire province. There's still a debate going on in regards to which part of the map specifically has been engulfed by this giant storm. There's been suggestions of the Hebra Mountains, Rito Village, the Forgotten Temple. Some even think it may be as far south as Satori Mountain. I personally believe that anything below Rito Village is improbable. If we line up the positions in the artwork, we can see that the storm is approximately to the west, maybe slightly northwest of the castle. This would place it somewhere in this general area. We can also see a long canyon-like depression in the landscape between the vortex and the castle. And if I had to guess, this would have to be Tanagar Canyon, the giant gorge that spans from the Gerudo Highlands in the south all the way up north and separates central Hyrule from the Hebra province. If this is indeed Tanagar Canyon, this eliminates places like Satori and the Forgotten Temple and narrows it down to Hebra alone, as it's the only province that lies west of the canyon. My top two contenders right now are Rito Village and Hebra Peak, and I'm currently leaning more towards the latter for a couple of reasons. Primarily the fact that we don't see Hebra Peak anywhere in the artwork, which is a bit strange. The summit of Hebra is one of the highest peaks on the map, only slightly outclassed by Death Mountain, and the two even share approximately the same latitude as well. The mountain and its iconic look, that being the massive hole carved into its peak, should stand out quite clearly, and yet it's nowhere to be seen, so it might be in the Eye of the Storm. This location was also severely underutilized in Breath of the Wild, especially given its size, and for another reason I'll get to in a bit, this is currently my best bet. I don't want to obsess over the exact location for too long, because I do realize that depictions of Hyrule in artworks like these are often stylistic and not always accurate to the actual in-game map. What is important is the tribe who call this province home. Whether the vortex is situated at Hebra Peak or Rito Village, the storm as depicted in the artwork looks big enough that it would spell serious trouble for the Rito's way of life regardless, and may even cover both areas. After all, Rito Village lies right at the foot of the mountain range, and their training facility, the flight range, lies even closer. In my visual concept, I happen to choose Hebra Peak, mostly because it looks cool. But Rito Village is a strong contender as well. Perhaps it lies at the Eye of the Storm, with its inhabitants trapped inside, unable to escape. But even if the village lies at the edge of it, it would still pose a serious problem. Imagine the immense forces one would endure so close to a tornado of this size. The wind speeds, blizzards, flying debris, and the freezing temperature of the area. I doubt it would be a pleasant experience for our feathered friends. I think it's quite interesting that a significant plot point like this was shown in artwork alone. There's only one very brief moment in the footage that alludes that something might be happening in Hebra, and it's so subtle that it only works in context, knowing what we know now from the artwork. In the first few frames of the final shot where Link is in freefall, we can see a patch of dark clouds on the left side of the screen, and below that we can see the snowy border of the Hebra province. This may seem trivial, I mean it's just a few clouds, but the weather system in Breath of the Wild didn't work like that. You can see this for yourself the next time you play the game. You will never see an isolated patch of rain or thunder clouds hanging above one specific area. When the sky changes, it changes globally, as far as the eyes can see, even in places that don't match that weather condition. You'll see rain clouds above the Gerudo Desert, only to fast travel there and find it dry and sunny, and now suddenly the place you came from is too. Logically speaking,
unless Nintendo pumped up the graphics for this game and actually made it so that each region did portray their exact weather, which they could, which means if you're standing in the central region and it's raining on Death Mountain and you turn around, you see rain there but not here. It's possible, I don't know, but that would be a big pump up though.
In a place like Farron, which is notorious for its frequent rainfall and thunderstorms, should oftentimes have dark clouds hanging above it when viewed from a distance. But it doesn't, unless the weather is also bad where you are. I don't know exactly how it works, and I'm getting sidetracked again, but the skybox seems to be localized or tied to Link's position on the map or something. The only exception to the rule are special events that are disconnected from the global weather system. An example being the thunderstorm hanging above Thundra Plateau, which is always present no matter the weather conditions or time of day. So either Tears of the Kingdom has a completely new weather system, which is possible, or these dark clouds are part of the very edge of the storm tormenting Hebra. It could even be both. My obsessive talk about storms, clouds, and weather aside, what does it all mean for Hyrule's surface in general? I mean, one additional storm is nice and all, and big as it may be, it doesn't exactly make a huge difference considering the size of the map in its entirety. So maybe this storm is not the end of it. You'll notice that most of the changes we've been able to spot so far all correlate to specific people or factions from Breath of the Wild. The Hylian Seat of Power, Death Mountain, home of the Gorons, the missing Deku Tree, spirit guardian of the Koroks, and now this giant storm potentially terrorizing the Rito. I don't think I'm alone when I say that there seems to be a pattern here. These are all beings and factions who stood against Ganon in some way, either providing support on the day of the calamity or 100 years after the apocalypse when the hero woke up for a rematch. Now that the true face behind the calamity, Ganondorf himself, is back in the flesh,
and if that is the case, what happened to the Sora?
It is to be expected that he would target those who foiled his scheme to take over Hyrule. These four factions already check the box, but there's also the Gerudo, Sheikah, Yiga, and the Zora. The total number of races that stood against Ganon and currently still inhabit Hyrule amounts to 7. I'm excluding the Yiga as they are basically just Sheikah turned evil. Is it a coincidence then that we happen to see this godlike figure surrounded by 7 orbs? Many have made the connection that the 7 orbs could correspond to 7 dungeons, with a possible 8th and final one, as Zelda games tend to have. The numbers 7 and 8 are quite prevalent in Breath of the Wild, and the series as a whole for that matter. The most notable are the 7 heroine statues, plus the secret 8th heroine, which is said to have been wiped from history. We have all the imagery referencing the 7 sages, the 7 races of the kingdom, with the Zonai possibly being the missing 8th, not to mention Breath of the Wild's Hyrule is divided into 8 provinces. The only problem is we haven't seen substantial footage of any location belonging to the other factions. There's not a single frame of Zora's domain. Kakariko Village, which is barely visible in this shot, is too far away to confirm any changes, and the home of the Gerudo is obscured by the highlands that wrap around.
Nintendo never reveals too much about Zelda games because they know how fucking psychotic the theory makers are. So when they show trailers, they don't show much and they won't show us everything. That's something that we're not gonna see until either we are shown something from the game, something more, another trailer, or until the game comes out. Otherwise, we're gonna spoil the whole game to ourselves. It's a fact. Now, I am gonna tell you one thing though, to keep in mind. Nintendo always does a Nintendo Direct. Always does a Nintendo Direct on February. It's like for years. They always do a Nintendo Direct in February. I have a feeling we're gonna get some more footage from Tears of the Kingdom on this Nintendo Direct. Why? Because it's gonna be the last Nintendo Direct before the game releases in May. So we need to be all very fucking tuned in and ready to watch that damn Direct when the date gets announced. I'm gonna check after this video if
the entire province,
yet, but I don't
so we
think
can't say for sure if these areas are also struck by disaster. The pattern suggests that they probably are, but right now we have no proof of this. Of course, the fact that we don't see these afflictions from afar in some of these wide shots doesn't mean they don't exist.
Right.
For all we know, the waters of Zora's domain could be poisoned or something, and the Gerudo are being tortured by an endless loop of Darude sandstorm. The orbs depicted on the mural could represent some sort of balance or stability, a balance which could have been corrupted by Ganondorf, leading to all kinds of disasters across Hyrule's provinces. And in order to cure this imbalance, Link has to visit some sort of ancient temples or shrines to, well, you know how it generally goes in Zelda games. Another possibility is that these orbs are the key to restoring the Master Sword in some way, which Ganondorf is aware of, and the many calamities plaguing these regions are simply him trying to prevent Link from getting to them. If there are indeed bigger, more classic dungeons present in Tears of the Kingdom, I think it's more than possible that most, if not all of them, are found on the surface or below it, as opposed to in the skies above. It would give a new and important purpose to the lands of Hyrule. Yeah. It's one more reason why I chose Hebra Peak as my prime candidate for the Eye of the Storm as opposed to Rito Village, as it would be a perfect location to house a secret temple of sorts. We have proof that the Hebra Mountains have all sorts of caves and secret chambers inside them, some of them hidden behind man-made doors, like the enormous cave that houses one of the great skeletons. So what about the islands in the sky then? What purpose would they serve if dungeons end up being on the surface below? Well, it could be that the means to access these ancient temples are obtained here, like certain powers for Link's new bracelet, for example. It's not uncommon for a Zelda game to hide key items necessary to gain access to a dungeon somewhere else in the overworld. By traveling to the sky and learning new abilities, you would be able to unlock new areas at ground level. Now, this may sound like it would be an extremely linear experience, but that doesn't have to be the case at all. If you can visit the many islands in any order you please, it means that the dungeons too can be tackled in any order, just like in Breath of the Wild. It goes without saying that this is all conjecture. Maybe dungeons are present in the sky. Maybe the surface world serves a completely different purpose. Maybe these are just stylistic depictions of a loincloth. You may have noticed while talking about the stuff happening on the surface that I primarily used footage from the newest teaser as opposed to the other two. This is because in the older footage, some things we've talked about like the storm in Hebra are different or not yet present. We can see Hebra Peak right behind the castle in this shot, and yet there's nothing unusual about it. While it could be that this takes place earlier in the story, before some of these cataclysms manifest, it's also obvious that Nintendo is constantly adding things and making changes to the game as they go along. Death Mountain initially didn't have Malice erupting from its summit. The bottom of the floating islands used to look like natural rock formations, while in the recent footage, most of them have these man-made antennas all of a sudden. And there are many more examples of changes and things being moved around as development progresses, which is only natural. I mean, think back at how different Breath of the Wild looked in some of the early footage. All we can do is guess, which is a big part of the fun of anticipation, at least for me. And there's so much more to theorize about. By the looks of it, Tears of the Kingdom has one of the broadest set of goals and mysteries in any Zelda game to date. The broken Master Sword, the curse on Link's arm, Zelda's disappearance and if and how we'll get her back, the catastrophes inflicted on
Yeah, I'll have to hold on for a second. Yeah. Often in February, but January and March are also possibilities. Normally. There isn't one announced yet, but we need to stay tuned.
Hyrule's people, the mystery and legacy of the Zonai, so on and so forth. Anyway, that is all for today. A big shout out to my mods, Discord community,
Alright. Well, there we go. That is definitely interesting. Let me put in some music for me saying goodbye. Oh my god, that's loud. Anyways. I'm excited. I'm fucking excited, y'all. I am. I don't know what else. I'm fucking pumped for the new game. Now, for me, it's now time to go. But I will see you tomorrow. Tomorrow we'll be playing Ghost of Tsushima. I didn't play it today because I felt too tired physically, so I didn't feel like getting stressed. But tomorrow it should be okay. So tomorrow I will be playing Ghost of Tsushima, so tune in if you can, because the game is pretty bomb. Anyways, from now I must leave y'all. I love you all so very much. Thank you for everything, for the subscriptions, for your love, for everything. I love y'all, and I will see you tomorrow. Ciao.